Okay, thank you everybody so much for joining. Good morning. My name is Clara Parker. I am Director of Global Exchange at Urban Design Forum. I'm pleased to welcome you to the info session today for the upcoming Fast Forward Global Exchange Fellowship. I am joined by my colleague Miranda Belizia, along with four members from the 2024 to 2025 and 2025 to 2026 Big Swings cohorts, including Nazra Namaga, Nicole Vlado Torres, Will Fisher, and Cynthia De La Rosa. I'll pass it to Miranda to introduce herself next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda Belizia, Director of Member Engagement at Urban Design Forum, and I'll pass it to Nazra.
Hi everyone, my name is Natra. I'm an architect. I work for Perkins Eastman, and I'm a Twice an Urban Design Forum Fellow, which I hope I'll be talking to you more about.
Hi, I'm Nicole Vlado Torres. I'm an architect and affordable housing advocate. I am the Director of Capital Projects at the Public Housing Community Fund. I also co-chair the Housing Committee at the AIA New York. I'm involved with Nycoba Noma and teach at Cooper Union.
And let's go to Will next.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Will Fisher here. I work in renewable energy and also have a startup in the world of missing middle housing and accessory dwelling units. I have been in the city for about 10 or 15 years, mostly working in city government, also on the Long Island City Partnership Board. And or currently just finishing the Big Swings Fellowship in 2025, 2026. Cynthia.
Thanks, Will. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cynthia De La Rosa. I am a community engagement consultant, currently working with the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust as a resident engagement specialist. I also have my own firm, which I recently started. In this space, I also am with Will, I'm wrapping up with the Global Exchange Program, and I have so much to say. So I'm delighted to be with all of you. Back to you, Clara.
Thank you all. And I'm going to pass it over to Miranda.
Great. Well, we are so thrilled to welcome a new round of candidates to apply for our Global Exchange Fellowship with a focus this year on mobility to explore cities taking courageous steps to reclaim streets, expand public transit, and undo the dominance of the private car. If you're still getting to know us, Urban Design Forum's mission is to connect and inspire New Yorkers to design, build, and care for a better city. And what makes our organization unique is that we're part think tank, project incubator, and professional community. We discuss ideas for the future of the city and put them into action. And we work across 6 issue areas, recognizing that a healthy neighborhood requires a stable home, a dignified workplace, safe commutes, and lively public spaces. We think and we work across different scales as well, from very local and neighborhood level to citywide to global. And we have over 1,200 members working across the public and private sectors in planning, policy, design, development, and beyond. We foreground our interdisciplinary community as our strength, and through public events and mailing lists, we reach thousands of New Yorkers every year. And to give you a better sense of what we do, here's a few highlights. On the left, you'll see a policy conversation we hosted with Andy Byford on the transformation of Penn Station. On the right, this is an image from our community design program. It's a structure at Lou Gehrig Plaza to solve the problem of the lack of shading and seating in the plaza. And in the center, you'll find a report from last year. This was a set of ideas shaped by years of fellowship work and refined through a series of issue-focused workshops utilized with conversations with the mayoral candidates last year. And so this is just a glimpse of our work, but it highlights the breadth and the range of what we do. I'm going to pass it back to Clara to dive into our Global Exchange Fellowship.
Thanks, Miranda. So Global Exchange is Urban Design Forum's venue for peer learning between New York City and urban leaders around the world. Through events hosting global leaders in New York City, study trips, and the fellowship, Global Exchange connects New York City's civic community to cities around the world with the goal of inspiring creative change around shared challenges, from housing and infrastructure to health and resilience. Past events have featured speakers such as the chief urban designer from Singapore and New Zealand's housing minister. Upcoming events will include a presentation on a new ecological park on the site of a canceled airport in Mexico and a talk on London's Elizabeth Line. So why Global Exchange? Urban Design Forum's programming focuses primarily on New York City. The Global Exchange program aims to build relationships with other cities who face similar challenges but often approach them very differently. Because cities outside the US have such different political, economic, and cultural contexts, we know we can't simply take good ideas from elsewhere and plant them here. So instead, our goal is to understand the cultural and political shifts and the thinking behind bold solutions so that we can see other possibilities here in New York City and in the United States. We believe sincerely that especially now, it is so important to be building bridges internationally. So let's talk a little bit about the Global Exchange Fellowship. The Fast Forward Fellowship for Mid-Career Leaders will bring together fellows from across sectors to engage leading local and global experts, travel to Mexico City to study its approaches to mobility, publish findings, and meet with local decision makers to demand courageous public policy at home. Our study trip is a collective and immersive learning experience that really grounds our global research for the remainder of the fellowship. And I'm going to pass it to Cynthia to share more about her experience during the Tokyo study trip with this year's cohort.
Thanks, Clara. Okay, so the study trip, in all honesty, changed my perspective in how cities, the potential of cities and how they can function, especially how New York City can learn from just how utilizing spaces and in a more effective way. So as a New Yorker, and I worked in policy and with city agencies very closely, very intimately. I went in with an idea of how and an assumption of how this trip would go, that we would meet with municipal government and we would ask and in interesting, complex questions and get some answers. And I went in with came back with more questions than answers. And that's because by design, we use the city as a classroom and learned vicariously through the conversations that not only that we had with the folks that we were meeting, but also with each other, with the cohort. It was very interesting for me to tour public housing Downchies and see the possibility of what's available for people to of all classes, structures to live in a space where they feel taken care of and they feel whole. It was an interesting experience for me. Maybe I should use a different word. It was a reflective experience. It was a reflective even now, I'm at a loss of words because it was so impactful in how engaging people are with the city structure and the systems and respectful. And it really energized me in how we as New Yorkers trying to shape the city in ways that make more sense and are more effective for each other and the future. It really was informative to be in a space or in a city where things work well, and they seemingly, people seem just very interconnected with the policies, with the places, the food. I mean, even I made friends throughout this week. Will and I toured the entire city, basically, got lost, and I think there was something to marvel at the fact that you're like a student of life, but at the same time, I know I was never gonna get this experience again. So I don't want to oversell it, but like I really enjoyed just being. And I don't think I would have taken that moment to just be in another place. So I really enjoyed the opportunity to take a step back, to take and deep dive into a culture, into a new place, and follow that curiosity, present myself as a learner in a new space, um, bring my questions into these meetings, bring my own assumptions, and gut check those assumptions with my cohort, and really follow that curiosity. At the same time, enjoy wonderful food, meet new people, and even have a good time singing karaoke. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to sum up in a few minutes or two pictures, but to give you a slice of an idea, on the left is a photo from our Berlin study trip during the 2024 study trip that was meeting with members of the Berlin Senate. And then on the right, a photo from an, an exchange and dinner with urbanists from Tokyo at a venue called the International House. So really like from very formal meetings to relaxed exchanges. We really do lean into the exchange part of it, and we found that everywhere we've gone, people want to learn as much from us as we want to learn from them. So it's not just a matter of taking, but really sharing what we have to learn also. So this year, we will travel to Mexico City from October 5th to 9th to meet with government, design, and civic leaders and explore the city's approach to mobility and the public realm. These are just two photos of sites we will see. On the left is Paseo de la Reforma, famous for its car-free Saturdays. So if you come early or stay late after the trip, you can get a bike and participate. One of our trip's hosts, Gensler, is located right here and will serve as a home base for our group. On the right is the Mexico-Toluca interurban train El Insurgente, which is a new train connecting Mexico City with the broader state of Mexico. And it's reducing travel times for around 230,000 people per day. So hopefully we get to ride on this train. So I'm going to talk now and invite others to join in talking about the learning and workshop days. And I'll let this ambulance outside pass. These are really the meat and potatoes of the fellowship, both the fellow-led learning days and the Urban Design Forum-led workshop days. This is when we come together for full days throughout the course of the fellowship in New York City. We get out into the city, we explore the topic of mobility in New York City through the lens of each working group's topic area. This allows us to connect to a wide network of New York City mobility leaders and practitioners while touring sites around the city. I'm going to pass it now first to Will and then Nicole to share more about their group's learning days and the impact of these days throughout the fellowship.
Yeah, so thanks, Clara. So in the not mobility focused, our fellowship has been focused on housing. My group in particular is focused on adapting homes and ensuring that our housing stock and communities can meet the challenges presented by climate change. So our study group did our when was it? Maybe it was about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, at the Solar One Environmental Education Center on right on the East River in the East 20s. And so what this sort of represented for us was after a number of months working together and doing research, was kind of pulling together all of the contacts that we already have, as well as contacts that we've made throughout the process of doing the research and getting together for this sort of full day immersive experience. And so we very much planned it purposefully to be on top of the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project. So we got to get out for a tour during the middle of the day with DEP staff to talk about how the new floodgates on the east side are going to work and are going to protect the public housing and rental housing and co-ops inside the gates, but also bring together a number of panels and discussions through that day and really ensure that our colleagues could understand the full scope of both the climate challenges and the solutions. I think that we've all, and probably everybody here, we've all been to panels and events that are dry or one-sided or boring or uninsightful. And I think, one of the things that's been most fun and exciting about the forum and this fellowship is that it both presents you the opportunity of this brand to pull together a lot of really interesting speakers, both from your network and extended network. So we had former council member, city council member Carlina Rivera, who's now at the Affordable Housing Industry Association, join us along with a couple of leaders from local CLTs and affordable housing co-ops, but then also a few folks who do interdisciplinary work both in the Netherlands and in New York and other places like that that are sort of rising more quickly to meet the challenge of climate change. And so that day provided a good opportunity to shape the narrative in a way that we could sort of control ourselves and include those perspectives that oftentimes you feel that you miss. And so this fellowship is a very good antidote for the sort of way that this discourse happens a lot of the time, particularly in a subject area that you feel passionate about and that you want to, bring those new perspectives to the table. And again, I think Urban Design Forum, provides a healthy budget to plan those events, and the number of interesting tours and people that we've met throughout the past year has been really phenomenal. There have been 6 or 7 of these learning days, and each one with a unique set of new perspectives brought to the table, site tours, meeting other interesting people, etc. I'll pass it to Nicole now.
Thanks, Will. And I think Will really covered a lot of the sort of, I think the sort of the really interesting and exciting benefits, opportunities, and challenges that come with the learning day. The main thing is make it fun. This is something that, I think when you have the privilege of getting to sort of choose how you want to learn something, you get to think not just around the voices, but the different ways that you can experience a day. I think for some in the group, it's very exciting to see some familiar names in the participant attendee list right now, and a lot of names I don't recognize. Like, I think that you get to, some people have teaching experience already, have developed public events, and you get to think about like how to think more expansively around that, especially around a topic. So I just want to sort of quickly say that I joined the fellowship at a moment where I was in the midst of a career pivot. And so it was a very exciting moment to think about how I can sort of return to the classroom without it being the classroom, to be in a think tank without sort of the stakes involved of having to produce, sort of work in a traditional sense. And it was very exciting to be in a space with like over 40 other mid-career professionals who were interested in housing, just like those of you who might be interested in transportation or in just the function of cities. And the amount of learning that happened in that space was, I can't even explain. It was really, really exciting and very concentrated. So the learning days again were that my group was focused on building buy-in for affordable housing. We spent the entire day in Gowanus. It was, a case study in real life where we got to see cranes in action. We got to spend time with the Fifth Avenue Committee and learn about their efforts in creating community engagement and building some of the sort of agreements that allow that Gowanus development to happen in a way that really connected back to residents of the city. And then we got to spend the day in the Van Allen and use that space, play a game together, have a panel discussion, get to know the staff of our hosts, and also have a fireside chat. I felt very lucky to be able to have a one-on-one conversation with Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. He was generous enough to spend, an hour of his time with us talking about how he's built buy-in throughout the various stages of his career in public sector work as a leader. And I think in that closed setting, without the press there, was able to sort of speak candidly with us. I would say like one of the advantages of participating in this fellowship and developing your learning day is not only leaning into your own networks, but you get to sort of dream big and build upon the clout of the Urban Design Forum. Clara and Miranda and the rest of the team really help make sure that if you have a big vision and want to do something bold and different, that you have the chance to try that. You don't have to feel limited or scarce. You don't have to plan an event the way that you've planned an event in the past. So if that's exciting to you, I think it's exciting to, for many of us to get to try something really different, and walk away from that feeling like I didn't just give folks the opportunity to learn collaboratively, but I also can be really proud of this product and walk away transformed by the experience personally. Was really, really wonderful. So if that's interesting to you, I'd say you should apply. I think that's all I need to say, and I will pass it back to Clara, I believe.
Thank you, Nicole and Will. So while the New York City-based learning days focus in large part on the challenges and possibilities for New York City, another significant part of the fellowship is working with your working groups and developing research, looking at case studies from around the world. So in this part of the fellowship, you focus on one part of mobility and are connected to global experts in relation to your research. For the past 2 years, Global Fellows have published case studies of global cities that have taken bold actions to address their housing crises. And the forum's role in this is really to advocate for the ideas that you find elsewhere, and think about how they can happen here in New York City by meeting with city agency leaders and relevant neighborhood and nonprofits who can help drive these ideas into action. So I'm going to pass it now to Cynthia and Nazra to talk a little bit about the process they went through in connecting to global experts, and producing this case study research. And I'll start with Cynthia.
Yeah, thanks, Clara. I am part of the Planning for Neighborhood Mix working group, and we are, yes, it's about how we fundamentally believe that housing goes beyond just building homes, that we need, in order for people to thrive, fully thrive in their communities, there needs to be closer social cohesion, right? And so that's the essence of people feeling like they belong, that they can pay their rent, and also lean on their neighbors, and coexist in a community that ebbs and flows, but also that there's meaning to it. And I think that thread is what really led us to look at different cities for our to build our case. We looked at Mexico City, Istanbul, and Barcelona. I will go through kind of what are the bits and pieces of it, but really, Mexico City stood out because of their Pilates centers. The Pilates centers are puntos de innovación, libertad, arte, educación, y sabiduría. So that's points of interest, freedom, art, education, and knowledge. And these are community hubs that are purposely built in low-income communities, by the government, but for the people. The people can operate it. And it's really these community hubs, these stirred spaces that really allow a community to thrive. And that is in what we are trying to really emulate with our big swing. Our big swing is this big idea that we're working towards, and we're kind of looking at different models throughout different cities and throughout the world. And we landed in Barcelona because of the precedented program there that they have, the super block. So this is tactical urbanism, or for those of you that don't know what that is, it's just basically using whatever you have at your disposal to create the space and make meaning out of it. So something that is like, for example, a park bench. How do we beautify it in a low income way and allow people to claim it, and introduce like this meaning for a community. So that essence through the super blocks is something that we took out, that we thought would be helpful towards our big swing. And in Istanbul, there's this essence of, or just a program, excuse me, of the playable city. And so the relevance here is that there could be, for our big swing, this like social political context versus where municipalities and federal governments can contribute to idea of play in communities. And that also bleeds into the larger idea of building social cohesion. So Mexico City, they're been doing this for a long time. They have since then, since the 2018, I believe, have built about 250 Pilates centers throughout the city. These are different in scale, now called utopias. These are units of transformation and organization for inclusion and social harmony. And again, the key word here is social harmony. How do we build a community hub, a network of massive, vibrant community centers that really meet the needs of the people? And that wouldn't have been possible. I feel like just to build this case, I don't think it would have been possible for us to even think about this idea of social cohesion had we not gone to Tokyo, because in Tokyo we experienced what it was like for us at this time to be foreigners in a country, be accepted, and feel like even in the short amount of time that we were building community with the people that we were meeting. They were putting us on to where to go, where to shop, where to eat. And I think that is the beauty of being. That is the beauty of this immersion, of this immersive experience, and celebrating culture and the possibility of the future co-creation, in a nutshell. So, Nazra, you're next.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I am from the first group, so 2024-2025 group, and I was on the affordability one group. So we had two affordability groups because it's a big deal. And I think so. My team and I, so there's eight of us. There was kind of this initial, I think any group does, where you spend a little time kind of coalescing around values, right? We all knew we kind of thinking that every New Yorker deserves a home shouldn't be a radical idea, right? And then just understanding what that means to us and how we want to approach this work. And so we decided to kind of dive into research on non-speculative housing, specifically how cities and specifically New York City can sustain affordability for generations, by kind of taking housing out of the purely market-driven systems. And so we kind of started by understanding vehicles for non-speculative housing, which kind of started during our study trip. So we went to Berlin, kind of understood their sort of cooperative models and their affordable housing models. On our learning day, we looked at land banking in Puerto Rico. We looked at Cooper Square Community Land Trust, which is, I think, the oldest community land trust in New York City. And so in order to kind of understand how New York City can expand non-speculative housing, so to address, and we were kind of looking at models for scaling this and where it's been done successfully. So we started, I think at the beginning of, as any group, you have first of all have like 10 cities or something, and you call as you kind of find the one that most aligns with what you're kind of trying to find a solution for. So we ended up looking at Montevideo, Uruguay. We looked at Denmark and looked at Ireland. And so, and I think someone already into that. I think it was Nicole who mentioned kind of just UDF can kind of get you into those and access to people that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So for Montevideo, Uruguay, we're looking at housing cooperatives, which have empowered residents through collective ownership and long-term affordability. And so we were able to connect with Alvaro Moreno, a technical advisor to the Uruguayan Cooperative Center, to better understand how that system works. So, and whenever these kind of events happen, they not only benefit our group, they're kind of open to the entire group, which I thought was really useful because there was a series of them. And so with Denmark, we kind of studied the National Building Fund and its kind of closed loop financing model. So we're able to speak to Heli Soholt, who's the founding partner and CEO of Gale. Had like kind of a breakfast event. She came, she talked to us, kind of told us how the model works, which I think there's only so much you could get from like internet research and reading things and reading books, but kind of getting firsthand knowledge from someone who has boots on the ground was really useful and kind of informing our outcomes. And then we also looked at Ireland, kind of looking at regulatory solutions to runaway costs of land, which was good. And I think what was especially valuable for me, so I'm not a houser, I am an architect. I actually do more institutional work than housing work. And so I came out and within the group, there were people who had varying levels of expertise of housing, to people who just live and breathe housing, and everything in between, right? And I thought it was like a good synergy to kind of learn from each other. And so what was especially valuable for me was just not only learning about these models, but understanding how they translate to New York City and kind of learning from my team. I think within my team, we had an economist, a researcher who's like a housing expert, people who work in development, me, an architect. So it was kind of a good group of people. So if you're considering applying, I would strongly encourage it. For me, this is one of the few spaces where I feel I could step outside of my day-to-day, that challenges how I think, challenges how things are, and meaningfully grow both my perspective and my network in ways that directly impact my practice. And in the end, how we kind of collectively take steps towards a better tomorrow, working with each other, even though I'm an architect, someone's an economist, a developer. But yeah. Clara, kicking it back to you.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I'm going to pass it over to Miranda to talk a little more about what we offer.
Yeah, thank you. So you've heard this through what everyone's saying, but the strength of the network is really one of the most important pieces of the fellowship. So getting to work alongside professionals who normally wouldn't get to work with and creating relationships that will really span your careers. The diversity of our membership is something we really pride ourselves on. You've heard like different professions named. I saw a question already about if journalists are welcome. Like, yes, like we want people with all different perspectives and backgrounds because that's how we really create research that is different from the research that we see constantly. And along with contributing to these original research that the forum will advocate for, to the city and peer organizations that will help bring your ideas to fruition. And then throughout the fellowship, you also will learn a lot about yourself, growing in your own personal leadership and tapping into the great resource and community, which is our broader membership. And then what we ask for, this is a group format for a reason. We want you to work across sectors. We want you to work with people who have different opinions, different expertise, helping to push forward ideas that are unique and innovative, ideas that wouldn't come to light if we were just working within our own disciplines and silos. And so, Nazra, I'm going to pass it back to you actually to talk about the value of the network itself, which you were kind of just getting into.
Yeah, I think it'll help to give a little bit more context. My development with Urban Design Forum began with the Forefront Fellowship, so that's a different kind of program that kind of supports emerging leaders and kind of cultivates their leadership within the urban realm. And so I was part of the kind of 2023 Free to Grow cohort, where we spent a year working alongside. So this program kind of pairs the cohort with city agencies. It's kind of more inward focused. So my year was kind of looking at how we can better center young people and the built environment. And so we got to work with New York City Public Schools and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene for a year. And so that experience for me was incredibly impactful. Part of the work I do is schoolwork and kind of and community buildings and stuff like that. And so it really expanded how I think about practice, how I engage with people. It kind of has a series of field trips and the way I approach kind of all of the work that I do. And since then, I've kind of stayed involved with UDF in some capacity. I'm on their inaugural associate board, where we kind of help sustain the Forefront Fellowship, which is really important to me. So that's a different program. It kind of costs $0 to participate, which is I'm really passionate about supporting it. And so, and then I kind of rolled in. So I finished Forefront in I think June of 2024. Then July of 2024 was the kind of the orientation for Big Swings. I kind of went from one program to the other. And so Big Swings for me, as I kind of spoke earlier, we had the opportunity to kind of delve into housing, and kind of take a different approach to work, which this is kind of more mid-career onwards type of program. So it's kind of like I think the sequencing for me was good. But the value of UDF for me has been the space and community that it creates, right? I feel like I've expanded my network and it's kind of has the space to explore issues that I care deeply about. I guess all of us that are involved care deeply about them, but it's kind of an opportunity to learn from peers across disciplines and engage with people tackling kind of similar challenges, but from very different perspectives, people that are kind of empowered with very different toolkits, like me, an architect, versus someone who works for a city agency, etc. And I think it has been kind of a tremendous learning experience for me, and I'm going to continue to be kind of part of the forum. So even if you don't want to apply for this particular program, I would challenge you to kind of attend their events, become a member. There's kind of many different ways you can kind of plug in. And yeah, it's been good for me.
Thank you, Nazra. And there's ways to stay involved. So once you're in for life. So it sounds like, 40 people in a fellowship sounds like it could be a lot. But what I want to explain here is that you will be divided into working groups and you'll have the opportunity when you apply to rank your choices. For Fast Forward, we'll be looking at these 6 subtopics. Building the best bus, how are cities designing and delivering fast, affordable, and accessible buses to connect underserved neighborhoods? Reclaiming the street, how are cities reconfiguring street space to balance safety, climate resilience, freight efficiency, and vibrant public life? Repairing divided communities, how are cities reworking major infrastructure like highways to confront environmental harm and reconnect neighborhoods? Emerging modes, how are cities deploying good design, smart regulation, and effective incentives to guide autonomous vehicles, e-bikes, and last mile delivery? Centering transit and development, how are cities aligning housing policy and transit investment to build connected and walkable neighborhoods? And engaging unlikely allies, how are cities rallying grassroots organizations, small businesses, anchor institutions, and real estate leaders to champion transit and safe streets together? These are all intersecting topics, and we're looking at these as sort of six parts of the overarching mobility topic. I'm going to pass it back to Miranda.
Okay, so who should apply? So this fellowship is for mid-career professionals in or entering senior leadership within their organization. So we say 15 to 25 years of experience. We also welcome candidates who don't normally see themselves as experts in transportation, but who understand its role in shaping the built environment. We welcome candidates with deep interest in the intersections of mobility and design, development, engineering, policy, advocacy, journalism, law, construction, and philanthropy. And we welcome women and gender expansive people, people of color, LGBTQIA2S+ people, people with disabilities, and professionals with experience in diverse community setting are strongly encouraged to apply. I want to quickly point out, because I've got a bunch of questions on this, that we targeted the 15 to 25 years of experience for this fellowship because this is usually a time in people's careers where there's less professional development, and we wanted to create space for that. But we always tell people, don't take yourself out of the running. So while the selection jury is going to be looking at years of experience as part of the criteria, if you think you're the right fit, regardless of exact years of experience or direct expertise, we still encourage you to apply. There are always exceptions for the right candidates.
Next slide.
Yes, thank you. And then tuition. So there is a tuition for this fellowship. It's $6,075, and that covers the cost of 130 hours of programming with leading New York City and global thinkers and the study trip. However, the additional costs of travel and accommodation for the study trip are not included in the tuition. So just to reemphasize, the study trip is part of the fellowship. So the cost of the tuition includes the study trip. We do have scholarships available. So if cost is a barrier, we encourage you to still apply. We don't want you to not be able to participate because of the cost. That's why we have the scholarships. And we aim to build a diverse and inclusive cohort that recognizes that applicants have different financial capacity to contribute towards this program. The requests for scholarships are separate from the selection process for the fellowship, and so it will not impact your application under the jury selection process. Please don't let tuition be the barrier for applying. And then a quick note, if you're accepted to the fellowship, you're automatically invited to the study trip. And again, the tuition of the study trip is included in the fellowship. I'm just re-emphasizing this because we get this question a lot. If you are only interested in the study trip, and that's great and cool, that's a separate application, admission, and tuition. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. But for the sake of this fellowship, the study trip is part of the fellowship.
All right. I think at this point, we can go ahead and turn it over to all of you in the audience for your questions. And Miranda, since you've already seen some of the questions, do you want to start us off with one of these and we can decide who to answer?
Yes. So we had a question regarding the research if the topics are developed within the working groups or the topics are pre-moderated. And I think that that question is asking about the working groups, which Clara just went over. But Sean, let me know if I'm interpreting that differently. And then
Can I add to that also? Because I think that like you're given a name for your working group and sort of a question. I would take that as a prompt. It's like that's you as a group of members of that team are going to work, as Nazra said, to reflect on what that means to you and move it in whatever direction feels right. So I do think that it shouldn't feel like a limitation. And I think there was, anyway, there's room to think about all of the topics. It doesn't have to be a limitation. I think it's just a framework.
Definitely. And the topics are definitely intersecting with each other, and the groups will work together as well. Okay, we had a question about what mid-career really means. Do you want to take that on, Clara?
Sure. I think Miranda already addressed that we, in both years of big swings had people outside that 15 to 25 range. So it's more of a guide than a requirement. We've also had a lot of career changers. So regardless of age, we've had people who maybe were just brand new to housing, but had, substantial experience in another industry. Again, I think we, in starting this program, looked around and saw that there was not a lot available to people who were not either emerging or at this executive leadership level. And so this really is designed to fill a gap in meeting people at a stage where perhaps they, are not planning to go back to school to get another degree, but they're really eager to have another learning experience. So if you feel like this describes you, you're at a point in your life and career where you want to learn, you want to grow, and you've been doing what you're doing for a while, and you're not necessarily ready to, get another master's or get another degree. This really is one of the only opportunities we've found for people, and we're excited to be able to do it in different issue areas. So after spending 2 years on housing, we're excited now to offer that same opportunity with mobility.
Thank you. We had a question about opportunities for early career designers. So I'll mention quickly, we do have another fellowship that's targeted emerging practitioners called the Forefront Fellowship. And then our general membership too is we really pride ourselves on having people from like early to like retirement age participate and getting to work together. So any of our general membership programming as well. We had a question about outcomes that we've seen already implemented as a result of the program.
Yeah, I think some of I think part of the theory of change in urban design forum is that ideas and recommendations that get developed as part of these fellowships keep keep coming back up. So you saw Miranda share early on in the webinar the Vision for a Better City, which was presented as a policy platform for all the mayoral candidates, but really pulled from years of different fellowships, outputs, and recommendations. I'll say specific to housing, even in the last mayoral campaign and the Mamdani administration's platform, a lot of the ideas that have come up had been developed during this program last year. And yeah, I don't know, Maureen, if you would want to say anything more specific about other outcomes.
Yeah, I think for the advocacy piece, a lot of that is the long game, as Claire is saying. So that's really the work of UDF, that we continuously pull these ideas not to only advocate for, but to work into our programs like down the line. So we don't, when a program is over, we don't just like fold it up, put it on our shelf and like wipe our hands clean. Like it's very much part of a living, breathing document that we utilize. And then another piece, Claire was mentioning our theory of change. Like another piece is, there's 40 people who participate in this fellowship who bring these ideas back to their own work every day. And that's a big piece of how these ideas move forward too. It's not just, us pitching ideas to the right people. It's everyone involved who's thinking in these new ways and thinking about how to implement that day to day in the work that they're doing. So it's a few different ways, but for sure.
And I know members from last year's cohort have already begun professionally to start to deepen their interagency or inter-organization relationships and do projects cross-sector, which is very exciting to see.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And I'll add one more thing to that is like the network. Like, a lot of the people that you work with on these fellowships, to your point, Nicole, like you are able then just to call up as needed to move projects forward. And that's such a beautiful piece of the work we do at the forum.
Yeah, and I would vouch for that as well. I am began the fellowship at a time that I was making a big career pivot and getting back into the housing space after a few years outside. And I have professional work I'm doing outside of the fellowship with people who are in the cohort right now, and working with them as consultants and partners. And I think it's turned into a really good way for me to um, for a long time, I thought I maybe needed to go back to grad school, but this is a very good alternative to that for me in my situation. And I think a lot of us are finding that, um, now six more architects than you knew before, and now other people in the policy space or at this and that agency, and that's been really tremendously useful. Even before the fellowship is over, already working with some of the other cohort members in a real world capacity.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, and it's not represented in this panel, but a lot of folks who work at city agencies participate in the fellowship. And it's also a time when a lot of people who like never got to work across agencies get to actually talk to each other at the table about a specific topic. And we really value that. Okay, we got a question about the scholarship application, if it's initiated after candidates are selected, and will the tuition fee be required to be paid at the time of application? So We have a selection jury that decides who's accepted to the fellowship, and then we do the scholarships. And so you're alerted at the same time if you've been accepted about what scholarship has been approved, and the tuition is required to be paid before you start. We do have payment plans though, and different options for payment. So, you can break it up over the course of a few months or whatnot. And it's something like we're all human. We're happy to work with you on something that works. A question about the deliverable that's expected at the end of the fellowship. Do you want to take that, Clara?
Sure. So the deliverable that gets published is the comparative case study research. So that is each working group identifies 2 to 3 cities. So you heard Nazra talk about the group from last year looked at Denmark, Ireland, and Uruguay. Cynthia's group this year looked at Mexico City, Istanbul, and Barcelona. And so a substantial amount of time is really devoted to identifying the cities that you're looking at, interviewing people. And then, right now, Will and Cynthia are in sort of the end phases of working on that written deliverable. That gets published on our website after the fellowship is over. We will print out and share an executive summary at their final event. But I would say another deliverable is also that learning day. So your group is responsible for facilitating a full day where you're working as a team to identify speakers, create a run of show, create materials to share with your group. And it's really about, what do you want to learn and what do you want to spend a day learning, and inviting the rest of the cohort into that learning with you. So those are the 2 big ones. They will also present their learnings at a final event. So it's pretty, it's not a light amount of work. It's a substantial outcome that comes out of it. But something that I have shared with this group and people who've applied in the past is really that what you put in is what you get out. You're working in a team. So, as people are experiencing busier times at work, they may not make every meeting with their team, and that's really understandable and expected. But I would say that, what you put in is what you get out.
And I'll add to that. I think, I happen to be in a place with a flexible schedule, but we were a team of 8 with parents of young children, folks with full-time jobs, folks with more than one full-time job. And I think, just like you do at work every day and with your family, and, just like clear communication and good sort of planning as a team, I think goes a long way. And I think that that's like the power of group, is that it's not on your shoulders alone. So I wouldn't deter folks who feel like they're in a very busy period of their lives, because I don't know that there's ever a good time. So, this is the time.
I agree with Nicole. It's a team effort, so which made it kind of a lot easier where we all have different strengths. I feel like my group in particular, at the beginning, we kind of half of us dove into the research and then half kind of focused more on the learning day. And then after the learning day, we kind of regrouped and kind of redistributed work. But I think different groups kind of approach it differently.
Yeah, and I'll just add on that 130 hours includes all the time you spend with your working group outside of the scheduled days, where you're probably meeting on Zoom, you're identifying a time in your schedule that works. So it really is, it's all the work, all the time that you put into the fellowship.
And if I can add, I think the process is the most valuable thing. Like that is the most valuable quote unquote deliverable. Like it's just working well with others, trying to figure out you all have that this shared values for this one particular working group, but there's so many ways in which you can address those questions that you may have or come out with more questions than answers, right? At the same time, you're learning from each other, and showcasing what you know or what you don't know to the rest of the cohort, and then having 39 other people, other working professionals from with different disciplines and different lived experiences be the container for your ideas. And then eventually I think for me, I've developed a rapport with many of my colleagues where when I say something wild and interesting and wild at the same time that I have a body of 39 other people that can be like, yes, and that was crazy because, and then they enlighten me with why that my idea is so out there, in spirit of creativity and following that curiosity. So I think that if you're a curious individual, if you are ready, willing, and able to learn from others, and if you are just, trying to make it in New York, this is the program for you.
Yeah. And kind of it's important to also like it was a really fun experience. Like outside of the work and everything, it was so great to kind of get to know people, to travel with them. Like I haven't done that like that level of group travel since architecture school. So it's like really good to be in a city, like riding bikes with other people, and just learning together.
I love that. We had a question about professional credits or continuing. So we are AIA continuing education accredited. So the learning days and the study trip. The question was specifically about professional engineer PDH credits. We are not, but if you email me, I can look into it. And then I think Nazra had shared this too. Sometimes the AIA credits are transferable, so we can always provide certificates of completion.
Yeah,
And that
and you can
works.
self-report. Like for, I don't know about engineering, but for AIA, you can self-report something you did that you think aligns, and they'll ask for a description about it. So it definitely, I did all of my hours for this fellowship went into my AIA learning credits, and I think Nicole did the same too.
Because of Nasra educating me about self-reporting.
Yeah.
See, the network is rich. And I think we
And
are like covered for the next 2 years with
Yeah,
yeah,
honestly, I have
hours.
like 130 hours where we needed 30.
we also now, I don't know if we did this for Berlin. The study trip gives you 24 AIA credits, and we now also UDF initiates the credits for all of the learning days. So
Very cool.
we're
And
learning as we go.
yeah, 12 HSW and 12 regular for the study trip.
That's really good.
That's worth some gold. That's great.
But yeah, so to that point, if there are other continuing education, please email me because we don't know until we know like what people need and I can look into it. We had a question, is the total number of 40 based on how many people apply? Which,
So last year's cohort had 40, the year before had 48, and we think that's our window now. So we don't that's a good number. I think more than 48 is probably too many. But yeah, I guess we are aiming for about 40. That seems to be the right size for this kind of work.
mm. Okay, and then we had a question about the fellowship costs with Mexico City and how they're related. Okay, so the program tuition for the fellowship, fast forward, includes a trip to Mexico City. The trip to Mexico City is part of the fellowship. So the tuition you pay for the fellowship includes the trip to Mexico City. It does not include your flight or your hotel. That's you pay on your own. Um, Additionally, do
And that
scholarship.
tuition, just to clarify, Miranda, it means that you get to participate in the trip. You get to meet, go on all the field trips, and there were some definitely like meals, snacks provided as part of that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And experts and translators, like it was a whole thing, right? Because
A lot
not
of
every expert speaks
transportation.
English.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
You,
kind of like a really well curated week
what I
of
heard from a
stuff.
lot of people is they got to just turn their brains off as far as like thinking about what they're doing each day and just follow along. Like we take care of the full day programming each day.
If you're the
Um,
person who has to plan for work or plan in your family, like you don't have to do that. You just like show up with a cup of coffee and follow people
yeah,
and learn. It's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
And
And
if
then,
you are
oh,
interested in doing any sightseeing beyond the trip, we would definitely encourage you to come early and or stay late because our days will be pretty packed.
yeah.
We will schedule really full itineraries for those 5 days.
The question is also asking if the scholarship applies both components or only the core program tuition. So Mexico City trip is part of the program. So the scholarship applies to your whole participation in the program, which includes the trip to Mexico City. So if you had a 50% scholarship, that's all you would pay. And if you are joining for Mexico City portion, then you would book your own flight and hotel. I hope what I'm about to say next doesn't cause a confusion. If you are interested in just the trip, so if you decided, okay, 9 months fellowship, not for me, Mexico City sounds really interesting, I want to do the study trip, that is a separate application. You can come on the study trip. There are no scholarships for just the study trip, though. If you're interested in just joining the study trip, it has its own tuition, it has its own application. You can email me, we'll send some follow-up links too, but that's not included in what we're talking about right now. So that's like a separate thing that we welcome our members and our network to join us for. But if you're interested in the fellowship, this 9 month fellowship on mobility, whatever your tuition that is approved with your acceptance, that includes the study trip to Mexico City and everything that everyone talked about that is in part of the study trip as well.
And depending on where you work, some of your employers will help or support this. I think you have to just be open to be like, how will this add value to you and to them, and what will you bring back? And sometimes they might also be open to supporting you, which is nice.
Yeah, that's a great point. And like Claire and I are more than happy to provide letters or support to show like what the learnings is out of the fellowship and out of the trip to help you with that, which we've done many times for many of participants. We had a question about what about the opposite? Is it possible to only participate in the fellowship and not the trip? Yeah, if the trip part of the fellowship is optional. So if you are in the fellowship and you don't want to go on the trip or you can't, that's totally fine. It won't impact your participation in the fellowship. That is an optional piece. And in fact, on the application, you'll see every date of every meeting for the fellowship, and it says optional next to the study trip. So you can like see right there what is, what we ask you to be at and what is optional for you to be at.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that we encourage as many people as possible to go on the trip. It's a great experience, but you're not penalized if you can't. We had a couple people who were expecting children and they were too close to their due date to go on either of the past study trips. So we've always had most people come and then a handful of people who were not able to.
But I will say if you're on the fence and can, you should because it's rich beyond the words can describe. And I think the way that the core group can connect with one another as individuals, like you don't have that immersive experience in life very often where you get to spend a few full days with your colleagues. Then you come back and you know each other like deeply, which is really nice way to sort of continue to build the fellowship through.
That's all I'm seeing on the questions typed,
Great.
but yeah.
Then I'm gonna turn it over if anybody wants to share any last thoughts or get a last question in the last 2 minutes. And we'll close out.
Yeah, I think if you're on the fence about applying, I think apply. It's a great program. Like there's just parts of it that live in my head forever, like the learning days and just like this one group, we spent the whole morning in housing court in Manhattan, just going from courtroom to courtroom to courtroom and just seeing things. And it was like a tremendous eye-opening experience for me. Like I would never have an opportunity to do that, like ever. And so I think I would just advise just do it. And talk to your supervisor, talk to your job. They might be able to support you. Like my job helped kind of pay for it, as long as you just let them know how this will add value to you as their employee, to what will you bring back, and many places will be open to supporting you in some capacity.
Yeah, I agree. And I had no income and I went on a payment plan and that, little monthly payment felt very small compared to what I was receiving in terms of the experience every month.
Yeah, if you are, again, a curious learner and love experiential learning, I think this is a really immersive experience. It's a remarkable experience to just give back to yourself and to a learning community and build a community that is really, embedded in New York City and serves as a think tank, but it serves as more than that. And I think that's yeah, it's a great way to just put yourself in that narrative.
Yeah, we need you to help us improve our subways and transit systems. So come back and help.
Thank you all so much. Will, any last thoughts?
Nothing to add. I'm coming back this year for the Mexico trip. I guess I should say that. I had such a good time that got to get more.
Okay, I'll join you.
Yes, we welcome alumni on all these trips. Well, thank you to the panelists, especially. I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. I know you're super busy. And thank you all to everyone who has joined us for this webinar. As a next step, please stay in touch. You can reach out to me or Miranda. We're happy to answer any of your questions. Submit your application by May 1st. You'll need a resume or CV with a statement of interest and a nominating letter. All of this is relatively short, what we're asking for, and you will get notification of results by May 19th. Stay in touch, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you all.